Welcome to r/slash Offmychest, where OP is an actual hero. Our next Reddit post is from Suitable Mission. My husband is 43 and I'm 31. We've been married for 7 years and have a 5-year-old and 9-month-old. My husband left our children alone, and he refuses to admit to it or tell me where he was. I'm furious, enraged, and my husband keeps telling me I'm making a big deal about nothing. This just happened this weekend. I'm on the board of directors for a local nonprofit organization. I had to attend an event for that organization this past Saturday, and I was gone for most of the day. My husband was supposed to be home with our kids. I texted him a few times and he responded. When I called around midday, he didn't respond, but that's not very unusual. Shortly after that, I got a call from my mom. She said my son had just called her, and when she asked him what he and his sister were doing, he said they were both watching TV. When she asked where their dad was, he said his dad wasn't there. My mom asked him several other questions, and from my son's responses, she believed he was telling the truth and that my husband wasn't there and that there was no adult there at all. She said he didn't seem scared to be alone or worried about where his dad was at. He just called her to chat. He has a tablet designed for children with pre-programmed contacts that he can call. It's only a few people, just family members. I left the event immediately and began texting and calling my husband repeatedly. He didn't respond to my first several attempts. It took him about 10 minutes, I was halfway home at that point, to respond. I was so confused, so worried, and really mad, and I asked him where he was. He said that he was at home. I told him our son had just told his grandmother that he was home alone with his baby sister watching TV about 15 minutes ago. My husband denied it, and I told him I was too upset to talk and drive. When I got home, I checked on the kids right away, and they were both fine. My husband was home, and I asked him again, where was he? He said he was home the entire time. He doesn't know what our son was talking about. He must have just been confused since he had gone to the basement to do some laundry. I ran down to the basement. It was the same load of laundry I'd thrown into the dryer the night before. He didn't do any laundry when I was gone. I asked my husband why my son would be confused about whether his dad was home or not. Where in our home would he have gone, and for how long for our son to think that his dad wasn't home? That doesn't make sense with a 5-year-old and a 9-month-old. You wouldn't leave them unattended that long. Why was he nowhere to be found when my mom asked my son to go check certain areas of the house? I begged my husband to just admit it, to stop treating me like an idiot, and to stop accusing our son of lying. Just tell me the truth, because being lied to right to my face is so incredibly maddening. He insists he was home, but he can't come up with any believable story of where he was or what he was doing during that time. The way he answers me when I ask him about this and demand truthful answers is so dismissive. When I tell him, "You left our children alone," he quickly says, "No, I didn't. So anyways." He says I'm overreacting and letting our son's imagination drive me crazy. I'm convinced he was gone. We don't have a Ring camera, but at least one of our neighbors does. I'm so upset about this that I'm tempted to ask one of our neighbors for the Ring footage. I had to go out to my car to scream and cry because I was so upset. Of course, I didn't want my kids to see my reaction. I can't put into words how upset I am about the fact that I know he must have really left them alone, but have no proof. And I'm being treated like I'm a paranoid nutcase of a woman by him. Then, 4 days later, OP posted an update. Since then, we've had many arguments about it. I've been living in a constant state of anger and frustration. I didn't want to fight about it anymore, but I couldn't help it, and I kept bringing it up again and again. I couldn't lay low and pretend to get over it while I waited for him to do it again and catch him in whatever was going on. I also knew that demanding he tell me the truth wasn't going to get me anywhere. Since he had been refusing to talk and deflecting for days, all it was doing was making me enraged and feel like I was about to have a brain aneurysm. I told him to hand me his phone so I could check his location at the time. He refused. He said that he wouldn't do it and that it was a violation of his privacy. He won't be treated that way and refuses to give in to my delusions. You think I enjoy being in a situation where I have to beg my husband to show me his phone so I can see where he was? I hate it. I don't want to live that way. I told him it's simple. If he really was at home the entire time, just prove it. Why wouldn't he want to clear this whole thing up? I got so mad that he wouldn't turn over his phone that I told him I was going to the neighbor's house to get their doorbell footage. At first he was like, "Fine, go do it." He didn't think that I actually would. He knows that I don't like to air drama to others, so he probably figured I'd just swallow all the garbage he's been giving me. Luckily, I was totally being driven by anger at this point, so nothing was going to stop me from going to that neighbor's. When I actually started to go out the door, he tried to stop me and followed me out the door. I felt pure anger rushing through my veins, nothing else. The neighbor, who I've probably said less than 10 words to in the entire time we've lived here, told me he would send me the footage. I went home, told my husband that the neighbor didn't have the footage from that day anymore, and told him I just needed to go to the store and cool off. So I put the kids in the car and went and parked somewhere while I waited for the neighbor to send me the footage. I have the neighbor's phone number now too, and he told me that if I need any more footage, he'll be happy to give it to me. The video shows a blue car that I don't recognize show up and park in our driveway. A blonde woman gets out of the car and goes towards my house. She walks on the outside of our garage towards the gate leading to our backyard. The gate is too far back and out of the way to be seen on the doorbell footage. She and her car were there for 23 minutes. The car leaves right around the time that my husband called me to say that he was home and had been the entire time. Just as I was rushing home in a panic and calling him on repeat. There's one of two possibilities as to where they went. She either came in through the side door of the house, which does provide direct access to the basement, or, and what I think is more likely, is that they were in the backmost area of our yard, which is a gated pool area. Immediately behind our house is a grass lawn. Then you take a step down a few steps and we have a patio, and then there's a fully gated area where the pool is. It's not like what you think of when you picture a gated pool. It's a full 6-foot wood fence all the way around, plus even taller landscaping for added privacy. You can't see into the area at all unless you're inside. I think it's more likely that they were back there because my son said his dad's keys were gone and we keep the gate locked with a key. The pool is closed for winter, but there is one small building back there, sort of like a shed that we converted to a changing area. And there's a covered patio with furniture. I'm convinced that's where they were. So technically he was home, but in an area totally removed from the house and where he couldn't see or hear the kids if something happened. I asked him how he could explain this. What were they doing? I obviously didn't need him to tell me what they were doing. But for some reason, I still had hope that he'd finally be honest. He wasn't contrite. He showed no remorse. He was just like, yeah, she was here, but I obviously never left. Who is she? How long has this been going on? And if he's going to be such a disgusting, despicable excuse of a man, then why couldn't he at least have found any other time and any other lie or excuse other than when he was home alone with our kids? I told him I know this has happened before, and I demanded to know how many times he's done this when he's been alone with the kids. He swears this is the only time, but he still doesn't have the balls to confess to what they were doing. I don't believe him that this was the only time, for your information. I still have so many questions, and I feel like my heart is beating 200 times a minute. My blood pressure is through the roof. I've cried a lot, sobbed, begged for somebody to help me, yelled, screamed, ordered a bunch of books about divorce and custody. And you know what? The next day after our multiple explosive fights, him putting his hands on me and me seeing the evidence, he acted like everything was totally normal and like none of the stuff ever happened. I woke up still seething, exhausted, broken, and he's acting like everything is totally normal. He said that he was ordering breakfast to be delivered from our favorite breakfast place. He asked if I wanted to go to the store together later and try this new recipe for chili tonight. What? Why would I want to do any of these things with you now? There's been absolutely no acknowledgement of anything he's done or what's transpired between us these past few days. He deserves an Oscar for how well he was able to act like none of that happened, completely comfortable and non-fazed. I know it's a waste of my energy, but I just desperately want him to admit the full truth of what he did that day and any other day with this woman. I want to hear it from him. It won't change whatever he's done, but he could at least have the respect and decency to be honest now that he's been caught. That's a ridiculous thought though, right? How foolish of me to expect this man to show decency and honesty now. If he were a decent and honest man, then he wouldn't have had a strange woman over to our house and been out of sight from our kids for 23 minutes. His continued denial and refusal to admit to anything other than the bare minimum. His attitude like I'm somehow being controlling or infringing on his rights by asking for information. that's almost more hurtful than him cheating on me. OP, you are wasting a lot of time and energy and emotion and anguish on this guy. Just leave, take the kids, dump them, and thanks to the amazing neighbor's camera footage, you can pretty easily get custody considering he abandoned the kids. It's kinda strange though, I couldn't help but notice that he wouldn't give you his phone to show his location because after all, he was home the whole time. Which makes me think that he was actually afraid, not about the location, but about text messages and dick pics and sexy videos and all that type of classic cheater evidence. Our next Reddit post is from Level Title. I went to a deli around midnight last night for food. I see this really young girl, maybe 21 or 22, who's incredibly intoxicated. She can't even stand up. I look over and I see this creepy delivery guy who's in his late 50s or 60s, literally telling her, "Let me take you somewhere to feel better." He keeps trying to give her something that she doesn't want. I'm too far away to see what it is. Moments later, he sits her down in a chair and is clearly trying to coax her into leaving with him. I call the cops and they claim they'll be there soon. 10 minutes pass and no one arrives. I go outside and all of a sudden I see this guy holding her up and dragging her through the streets of New York. He is aggressively making out with her and she has no idea where she is. I call the cops again to no avail. I follow them and finally the guy gets to his apartment and I had to intervene. I asked him if he knows this girl. He gets startled and backs away. She grabs me for a drunk hug. The guy panics and says that he's the cops, then changes his story to that's his sister. He reaches in his pocket to make it seem like he had a badge or gun. I completely ignore it because adrenaline had taken over at this point. I wasn't going to let this piece of garbage intimidate me. I asked the girl if she knew this dude or if she knew where she was, and she says no, they were going to have a fun time. I then asked her if she wanted that, and she told me no, she just wanted to go home. I snatched the girl's stuff from his hands and we walk away. The loser pulls out his phone to record us. I suspect that he's going to flip the story and say that I was the one harming her. We go into a bodega down the street to kill time. She's a mess, crying and saying she wants to call her dog to pick her up. The bodega owner steps in to keep her calm. That's how drunk she was. A small crowd gathers inside the store because no one knows what's going on. Luckily, a bystander intervened because he saw the effing loser still lurking outside waiting for her to leave. This idiot finally comes in the store and acts as if he knows her. The police show up 20 minutes later and question him. He can't keep track of his lies, so they kick him out and warn him to stay away from her. The police eventually orders her an Uber from her phone to send her home. I'm a little shaken up by it. I know it's 2025, but I can't believe this guy was going to sexually assault this girl if I hadn't intervened. The one thing that still bothers me were the cops telling me afterwards that it was no big deal because people get drunk all the time in the city. Yet they thanked me anyways. No, this was going to be sexual assault. Blatantly. I feel like I screwed up because this guy has footage of me and I don't have footage of him. I don't know. I guess I'm venting at this point. I feel like this shouldn't be traumatic for me in any way, but I've been thinking about it ever since. It's so messed up, man. Down in the comments, we have this story from John Spartans. Good work. I have a story from my late aunt who was a very butch dyke. She was getting gas in the middle of nowhere and nobody was at the cash register. She started looking around and finds someone trying to force themselves on the cashier in the back. My aunt proceeds to grab the guy off the girl and stomp his dick repeatedly. The guy was probably bigger than her, but the shock and pain was too much. She kept stomping him while the cashier called the cops. The cops came and the assaulter literally ran towards them saying, "Get this lady away from me." They had to hold my aunt back because she kept wanting to obliterate his manhood. I often think about her in this vein. Just a great lady with awesome empathy and compassion. She was the best. Hope you're resting wherever you are, Linda. Isn't it crazy how you could just take two random people and one of them could be this evil and the other could be this good? It's too bad there aren't more people like OP in the world. Our next Reddit post is from Feeling Ugly. I started dating my husband when I was 22 and he was 23. We dated for a while and got married when I was 24 and he was 25. I've had 3 boyfriends before him, and those were the only men that I'd slept with up until that point. Everything about our relationship and marriage was great, besides the intercourse. I thought that he was bad at it. I tried to talk to him about it and try some things, but it just wasn't working out. I was okay with it because I love everything about him, so I figured we could make do without the mind-blowing intercourse. Back in the beginning of December, I decided to sit down and have a conversation with him. I told him that I believed both of us could use some spice in our love life and proposed that we open our relationship. I told him that we can both learn more and bring that knowledge into our own love life. He seemed a bit disturbed by it, but I gently told him that I loved him more than anything and that I also needed to lean more so that I could please him better. I realize now that I should have stopped it when he looked disturbed, but I'm clueless. He thought about it for a couple of days and agreed. We set ground rules. Nobody we know, we both tell each other when we have dates and show each other the person. No details unless the other person really wanted them. And absolutely no bringing them into our home. We were slated to start in January to kick off the new year. We both started getting a lot of attention on apps. We were both hooking up with other people frequently, to the point where the love life between the two of us declined. I wasn't having good experiences, really, and started to think that maybe I was the one who was bad at this. He seemed to be such a different person. Like, he seemed happier and more energetic. I guess I got jealous and decided that I wanted to experience whatever he was getting, and decided that we should have a threesome with another woman together. He initially declined because he said that if he did that, then he'd have to let me have a 2-man, 1-woman threesome to keep it fair, and he didn't want that. I told him that I didn't want that, and that I wanted to experience another girl with him. He accepted that and reiterated that this was my idea and that we were not doing a male-male-female threesome, and if that was a problem, to tell him now so that we can scrap the idea. I told him I was okay with it and went to my Tinder to add woman to my queue and started searching. This is where things went south. At this point, we're in February. I found a 24-year-old woman who was cute and down to be with us. We met her at a restaurant the next weekend and had a great time chatting with her, and we trusted her and brought her home. We started getting into it, and immediately things were not well for me. They were primal with each other. He's hitting moves that I've never even seen, and she's enjoying it. And when he switched to me, it went back to being awkward. It was like I shut down and didn't know what to do, and he would ask me what he could do to make it better. I had no idea because obviously they were enjoying each other and I was the odd one out. I told him nothing and that we should continue, even though I wanted to go and hide. At one point, he was going at her from behind with more vigor than I've ever seen and grabbing her hair. Her eyes rolling back as she moaned like an animal, and he gestured his hand over to me so he could bring me in and kiss me, and I accepted, but was so out of it at that point. At the end, I tried to finish the show, but it didn't work, and she volunteered to try. And once again, she was amazing, and we got to the end fairly quickly. Afterwards, she left, and I was just shattered. I got in the shower and began crying quietly, and he hopped in with me to be romantic, but noticed and hugged me. We got out and we talked, and I said that I never saw him be so primal like that. It was animalistic. I felt like he enjoyed that way more than anything we'd ever done, and that I felt like I could never get him to the point that she did, and I felt absolutely horrible. I told him it wasn't his fault, and that this was all my doing. He held me as I cried, and we eventually went to sleep. Since then, I've been severely depressed. I have no libido, and turn my husband down when he tries to initiate. When he plans dates, I just say that I'm not feeling up to it. I feel horrible about that too, because I'm pushing him away for something I thought that I wanted. I know he feels guilty, and he apologizes profusely, and has even closed the marriage. But I just feel so unlovable and ugly that I have no energy for anything. I don't know what to do, and I feel like I'm single-handedly ruining our marriage by being bad at intercourse, putting us in this position, and then pushing him away. OP, I commend you for wanting to fix your love life, trying new things. But normally, when people want to try new things, they, bring in toys or costumes or backdoor activities. Immediately jumping to let's screw other people seems like a recipe for disaster. Or, the rare case that you're both super into it, but that seems super, super unlikely. So I don't want to blame you necessarily, OP, because you don't really seem like a bad person. but I don't know what you expected to happen here. That was rSlash Off My Chest, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit episodes every single day.